All right, let's get right into it. We're going to talk about something that millions, and I mean millions, of people deal with every single day. But most of us totally misunderstand it. Dry eyes. Now, what if I told you that for the vast majority of people, the problem has almost nothing to do with your eyes actually being dry? Yeah. Today we're going to play detective and crack the case on what's really going on.
And just to show you we're not messing around, let's start with this. This quote comes from major global studies, and it is a stunner. Severe dry eye can affect quality of life as much as angina. Let that sink in for a second. We're talking about a condition that can impact your day-to-day life, reading, driving, just working on a computer, as much as the chest pain that comes from a serious heart condition. This isn't just a minor annoyance. This is a real, significant medical issue.
And that leads us right to this massive shift in how the medical world even thinks about this. You see, for decades, dry eye was just written off. It was a nuisance, right? Something you just fix with some over-the-counter drops and get on with your day. But now, the evidence is just overwhelming. This is a complex, chronic disease. And thinking of it that way, as a disease instead of a nuisance, is the absolute first step to finding a real, lasting solution.
Okay, so if it's a disease, what in the world is actually happening on the surface of your eye? Let's dive into the science. We're going to treat the eye's surface as our crime scene.
The number one concept you need to know is this word, homeostasis. It sounds complicated, but it's not. Just think of it as the perfect, happy, harmonious state your tear film is supposed to be in. See, your tears aren't just salt water. They're this incredibly complex three-layer shield made of oil, water, and a kind of mucousy layer, all working together to protect and lubricate your eyes. When everything's in balance, in homeostasis, you don't even know it's there. It just works.
But here's the catch. That balance is super delicate. And the second it gets knocked off kilter, it doesn't just cause a little irritation. Oh no, it kicks off this vicious, self-perpetuating cycle, a downward spiral that just keeps making the problem worse and worse over time.
And here is that exact cycle. First, for whatever reason, the tear film gets unstable. This makes it evaporate way too fast, which leaves the tears that are left behind super concentrated. Basically, they get too salty. Well, these salty tears are actually toxic to the cells on your eye's surface. So what happens? They cause inflammation and damage. And that damage then messes with the nerves that control your blinking and tell your eyes to make tears, which, you guessed it, leads to even more tear film instability. And around we go. So, the million-dollar question is, what knocks that balance off in the first place? Something has to start that domino effect. This brings us to the next phase of our investigation, lining up the suspects. What's the real cause here?
In modern eye care, clinicians have stopped just treating dry eye. Instead, they hunt for what they call the driver. The driver is the specific root cause, that initial culprit that kicked off the whole vicious cycle for you personally. This is the new way of thinking. Find the driver, and you found the solution.
So let's look at the lineup. These are the most common drivers, the usual suspects. It might be clogged oil glands, or you might genuinely not be making enough of the watery part of your tears. Sometimes inflammation itself is the thing that starts it all. And then you've got some very modern culprits, like how we use our digital devices, and even tiny mites that can live on our eyelids. Crazy, right? Or maybe it's a lack of the glue, called mucin, that helps tears stick to the eye.
But for the vast majority of people, the number one driver is this one right here, clogged oil glands. This is officially called meibomian gland dysfunction. You have these tiny glands lining your eyelids that make the oily outer layer of your tears. That layer is absolutely critical. It's like the lid on a pot of boiling water. It stops your tears from just evaporating into thin air. So when those glands get clogged, it doesn't matter how much watery tear you produce because it's gone in an instant.
And if you want to see just how much our modern lifestyle is to blame, get a load of this number. One study looked at young adults who are constantly on digital devices. They found that a shocking 99.3%, almost literally every single one, showed clinical signs of dry eye. That is not a typo.
So, why? What's going on? Well, it's pretty simple. When we stare at a screen, we get locked in, and our blink rate can plummet by as much as 70%. We normally blink about 15 times a minute. On a screen, that can drop to just 4 or 5. And blinking is how you squeeze that essential oil out of the glands. So fewer blinks, and a lot of them are incomplete half blinks, means the oil doesn't get spread, your tears evaporate, and that vicious cycle gets a massive kickstart.
So how does a doctor figure all this out? Well, with this new, disease-focused understanding, the way we diagnose dry eye has become a true investigative process. It's really cool.
The process is now pretty standardized. It always starts with an interrogation, basically a detailed questionnaire about your specific symptoms. Then, the clinician looks for forensic evidence. They run tests to find actual, measurable, physical signs on your eye. And only after they have both of those do they move to the final step, running specific tests to identify the exact driver causing your problem.
This is so important. A proper diagnosis needs both. It's not enough for you to just feel like your eyes are dry. A good clinician has to match what you're telling them with at least one objective, physical sign they can actually see and measure. Things like how fast your tear film breaks up or checking for inflammation markers.
And once that driver is identified, well, that's when everything changes. Instead of throwing random stuff at the problem, treatments can be targeted, like a laser, right at the root of the issue.
And this is why just grabbing a random bottle of artificial tears off the shelf so often fails. It might feel good for a few minutes, but it's not a solution. You know, if your driver has clogged oil glands, adding more watery tears is like putting more air in a tire that has a nail in it. You're not fixing the actual problem.
This right here is the new approach in action. It's all about matching the solution to the suspect. Are your glands clogged? Okay, we use therapeutic heat and pressure to get that oil flowing again. You're not making enough water? We use specific drops with things like hyaluronic acid to add volume. Is inflammation the main problem? That needs prescription anti-inflammatory therapy. See? It's personalized, it's targeted, and it's way more effective. Ultimately, the goal of every single one of these modern treatments is exactly the same. It's not about just masking symptoms, it's not about temporary relief. The true mission is to break that vicious cycle for good and restore that perfect, natural balance, to bring your tear film back to that happy state of homeostasis. So, the next time you feel that gritty, burning, annoying feeling, ask yourself this question. Are you just putting up with dry eyes, or is it time to find out what your driver is? Because finding that answer could honestly change everything. Thanks for coming along on our little investigation today.